The woman I trusted most asked me to betray myself. I still remember the exact moment my world shattered. It was a Tuesday evening, 7:43 p.m. to be precise. I know because I was staring at the microwave clock when Sarah Daniels, my wife of 6 years, casually dropped a bomb that would change everything. "Mark, I need to tell you something," she said, not even looking up from her phone as I reheated leftover Chinese takeout. "I've been thinking about us starting a family, and there's something I need to do first." I turned around, expecting maybe she wanted to redecorate the spare room or take a vacation. What came next still makes my hands shake when I think about it. "I want one night, just one night, to explore. To be with someone else, to live out this fantasy I've had before we settle down and have kids." The container of lo mein slipped from my hands, hitting the kitchen floor with a wet splat. I stood there, frozen, watching noodles scatter across our pristine tile. The same tile Sarah and I had carefully selected when we bought this house 3 years ago, dreaming of the family we'd raise here. "What did you just say?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. Sarah finally looked up, her green eyes meeting mine with an expression I'd never seen before. Not quite defiant, not quite apologetic, but something cold and determined that made my stomach drop. "I said I want one night with someone else, before we have children, before I become just mom for the rest of my life." She set her phone down and leaned against the kitchen island, as if she was discussing weekend plans instead of destroying our marriage. "I need to know what it feels like to be desired, really desired, by someone who sees me as exciting, not just comfortable." The word comfortable hit me like a physical blow. Is that what I'd become to her? Comfortable? Safe? Boring? "Mark, Sarah, we're married. We took vows. I know what we promised, Mark. But I also know that once we have kids, this window closes forever. I'll be tied down, responsible, and I'll never get to experience this." Experience what, exactly? I could feel my analytical mind trying to process what she was saying, trying to find the logic in it, trying to understand how the woman I loved could ask me this. Passion. Real passion. She pushed off the island and started pacing, her heels clicking against the floor. "Mark, you're wonderful. You're stable and kind, and you'll be an amazing father. But when was the last time you looked at me like you couldn't live without me? When was the last time you made me feel like I was the most desirable woman in the world?" I opened my mouth to respond, but she held up her hand. "And I don't mean the way you tell me I'm beautiful when I'm in my pajamas with no makeup. I mean real desire, dangerous desire, the kind that makes you lose your mind a little bit." I felt like I was drowning. "So you want to cheat on me because I don't make you feel dangerous enough?" "I want one night to feel alive before I become a mother." Her voice softened slightly, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the Sarah I fell in love with. "Just one night, Mark. And then I'll come back to you, and we can start our family, and I'll never ask for anything like this again." The rational part of my brain, the software engineer who solved problems for a living, was screaming that this was insane. But the part of me that loved Sarah, that had loved her since we met in college, that part was desperate to find a way to make this work. "You're asking me to let you sleep with another man? You're asking me to give me this one thing so I can give you everything else for the rest of our lives?" I stared at her, this woman I thought I knew completely. Her auburn hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless even after a full day at her marketing job. She looked exactly like the successful, beautiful wife I'd been proud to introduce at company parties and family gatherings. But standing there in our kitchen, asking me to approve her infidelity. She might as well have been a stranger. Who? The word came out harsher than I intended. What? Who is it, Sarah? Because this isn't just some abstract fantasy. You have someone in mind, don't you? A flush crept up her neck, and I had my answer before she even spoke. There's, someone at work. We've been collaborating on the Henderson project, working late nights. He's different from you. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Different how? He's confident, aggressive. He takes risks. He makes me feel like I'm worth taking risks for. What's his name? Mark, that's not what's his name, Sarah. She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, in a voice so small I almost missed it, Jake. Jake Miller. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Jake Miller? Is the person you want to cheat on me with? My Jake Miller? He's not your Jake Miller, Mark. People change. He's successful now. He drives a BMW. He's married, Sarah. I looked him up when you first mentioned him. He has a wife and 2 kids. Something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe? Or excitement? I couldn't tell which was worse. That's complicated. Complicated? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to sleep with my former best friend who is married with children, and you think that's just complicated? You're making this harder than it needs to be. Her voice was getting defensive now, the way it did when she knew she was wrong but wouldn't admit it. It's just sex, Mark. One night. It doesn't mean anything. It means everything. I slammed my hand on the counter, making her jump. It means our marriage vows mean nothing to you. It means I'm not enough for you. It means I'm trying to be honest with you instead of just doing it behind your back. The silence that followed her words was deafening. We stared at each other across our kitchen. The same kitchen where we'd cooked breakfast together that morning, where we'd discussed baby names just last week, and I realized that somewhere along the way, I'd lost my wife without even knowing it. How long? How long what? How long have you been thinking about this? About Jake? She bit her lip, a tell I'd learned to recognize over 6 years of marriage. A few months. And have you already? No. She said it quickly, too quickly. No, Mark, I haven't done anything. That's why I'm asking. That's why I'm being honest with you. I wanted to believe her. God, I hoped I wanted to believe her. But the analytical part of my brain was already cataloging inconsistencies. The late nights, the new lingerie I'd found in her drawer, the way she'd been distant and distracted for weeks. And if I say no...
The week that followed Sarah's request was the longest of my life. I went through the motions: work, dinner, small talk about her day, while my mind raced through every possible scenario. She was patient with me, almost gentle, like she was nursing a wounded animal back to health before putting it out of its misery. But I wasn't just thinking about her ultimatum. I was planning. The first thing I did was call my sister, Lisa. At 35, Lisa Daniels had built a reputation as one of the most ruthless divorce attorneys in the state. She'd seen every kind of marital deception, every dirty trick, every way a spouse could try to screw over their partner. If anyone could help me navigate this nightmare, it was her. "You want to run that by me again?" Lisa's voice was sharp with disbelief when I explained Sarah's request during our lunch meeting at a cafe across town. She asked for permission to cheat? She framed it as honesty, I said. pushing food around my plate. I hadn't been able to eat properly for days. Said she was being upfront instead of just doing it behind my back. Lisa leaned back in her chair, her lawyer instincts clearly kicking in. Mark, I need you to think very carefully about what you just said. She implied that if you say no, she might do it anyway. That's what I heard too. And the affair partner is Jake Miller, your old college friend. I nodded, feeling sick all over again. They'd been working together on some project, late nights supposedly. Lisa was quiet for a moment, tapping her pen against her legal pad, a habit she'd had since law school. Mark, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you think this affair has already started? The question I'd been avoiding for a week hit me like a sledgehammer. I don't know. Maybe. What makes you think that? I told her about the changes I'd noticed. Sarah's new workout routine, the expensive lingerie, the way she'd become protective of her phone, the night she'd come home claiming to be exhausted but somehow unable to sit still. Classic signs, Lisa said grimly. Mark, I think your wife is asking for retroactive permission. She's already sleeping with Jake Miller, and now she wants you to legitimize it so she doesn't have to feel guilty. The words hit me like physical blows, but they also brought a strange sense of relief. The not knowing had been killing me. At least now I could work with facts. So what do I do? Lisa leaned forward, her expression intense. That depends. Do you want to save this marriage, or do you want to win? What's the difference? If you want to save it, you say no. You insist on couples therapy, and you hope she chooses you over him. But Mark, based on what you've told me, I don't think Sarah wants to be saved. I think she wants out, but she's too cowardly to just ask for a divorce. And if I want to win? Lisa smiled, and it wasn't entirely pleasant. If you want to win, you give her exactly what she's asking for. You let her think she's getting away with it, and you document everything. Adultery might not matter as much in no-fault divorce states, but it still matters, especially when it involves financial deception, emotional cruelty, or abandonment of marital duties. You want me to let my wife cheat on me? I want you to let your wife hang herself with her own rope. Lisa's voice was steel. Mark, she's already made her choice. The question is whether you're going to be a victim or whether you're going to be smart about this. I stared at my sister, seeing her not as family, but as the legal predator she had become. It was terrifying and comforting at the same time. What would I need to do? First, you document everything. Every conversation, every lie, every time she comes home late. Second, you protect your assets. Start moving money into accounts she doesn't know about, not to hide it, but to ensure she can't clean you out while you're gathering evidence. Third, you let her think you're the understanding, supportive husband while you build your case. That sounds, I searched for the word, manipulative. That sounds like survival. Lisa reached across the table and grabbed my hand. Mark, I love you, but you need to face reality. Sarah isn't asking for one night of passion. She's asking for permission to destroy your marriage while making you complicit in it. Don't let her make you the villain in her story. That conversation changed everything. Over the next few days, I found myself seeing Sarah differently. Not as my confused wife who needed understanding, but as an opponent who needed to be outmaneuvered. I started paying attention to details I'd been blind to before. The way she angled her phone away from me when texting. How she'd started taking calls in the other room. The fact that she'd been staying late at work 3 nights a week for the past 2 months. Always on nights when I had my standing gaming session with friends. But the real revelation came when I checked our phone bill online. Sarah had been texting someone over 200 times a month. Someone whose number wasn't saved in her contacts under any name I recognized. When I cross-referenced it with online directories, I found what I was looking for. Jake Miller. The text had started 4 months ago. Whatever was happening between them, it had been building long before Sarah's honest request. Armed with this knowledge, I made my decision. On Sunday night, exactly 1 week after her ultimatum, I found Sarah in our bedroom, applying an expensive face mask she'd never used before. "I've made my decision," I said, sitting on the edge of our bed. She turned to face me, trying to read my expression. "And?" "I'll give you your night." The relief that flooded her face was almost insulting. "Really? Mark, But there are conditions." Her expression grew wary. "What kind of conditions?" I rehearsed this speech a dozen times, making sure I sounded like a hurt husband trying to protect himself, not a man setting a trap. "It's one night, one time. After that, it never happens again, and we never discuss it." She nodded eagerly. "Second, I don't want to know when or where. I don't want details. I just want you to tell me when it's over." "Of course." "Third, afterwards, we start couples therapy. If we're going to have children together, I need to know we can work through this." "Yes, absolutely." "And fourth," I paused, letting the emotion I actually felt creep into my voice. "I need you to promise me that this is really what you want, that this is worth risking everything we've built together." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Whether from guilt or gratitude, I couldn't tell. "Mark, you're the most understanding husband in the world. I promise you, after this, I'll be the wife you deserve, the mother our children deserve." As she hugged me, her face mask leaving white smears on my shirt, I realized that Sarah genuinely believed she was getting away with something. She thought I was weak, understanding, manipulatable. She had no idea that by agreeing to her request, I'd just signed her death warrant. Because while Sarah was planning her perfect night of passion, I was planning something else. I was planning to document every lie, every deception, every moment of her betrayal. I was planning to give her exactly enough rope to hang herself. And thanks to Lisa's coaching, I knew exactly how to tie the knot. The next morning, Sarah was practically glowing at breakfast. She kept touching my arm, kissing my cheek, telling me how much she loved me. It was the most affection she'd shown me in months, and it made me sick to realize it was because she'd gotten permission to cheat. "When do you think you'll, I asked, playing the part of the nervous, accommodating husband. "Soon," she said, unable to hide her excitement. "Maybe this weekend. Jake mentioned something about a conference in the city." "Jake." She'd said his name so casually, like she'd forgotten I wasn't supposed to know who her affair partner was. Another lie to add to the growing list. Well, I guess I'll find something to keep myself busy. What Sarah didn't know was that I had already found something to keep myself busy. I'd found Lisa's recommended private investigator. I'd found spy apps for tracking phones and recording conversations. I'd found a forensic accountant who specialized in discovering hidden assets and financial deception. Most importantly, I'd found something I didn't know I had: the cold, calculating ability to plan someone's complete and utter destruction while smiling at them over morning coffee. Sarah thought she'd won. She thought she'd manipulated her understanding husband into getting her everything she wanted. But as I watched her practically skip out the door to work that morning, probably to tell Jake the good news, I realized that my wife had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She'd underestimated me. And before this was over, that mistake was going to cost her everything.
The text came on a Friday afternoon. "Going to the Henderson conference this weekend. We'll be back Sunday evening. Love you." I stared at my phone, knowing this was it. The night Sarah had been planning. The Henderson project was real. I'd verified that much.
but there was no conference. Lisa's private investigator, a sharp-eyed woman named Detective Martinez, had already confirmed that Jake Miller had booked a suite at the Fairmont downtown for Saturday night. She's not even trying to be creative. She's using the company credit card for dinners with him, charging personal items to business accounts, and leaving a digital trail a child could follow. Now, sitting in my home office, I activated the tracking app I'd installed on Sarah's phone during one of her long showers. The little blue dot showed her still at work, but I knew that would change soon. My laptop chimed with a notification. The voice-activated recorder I'd hidden in her car had picked up a phone conversation. "Can't wait to finally have a whole night together," Sarah's voice came through clearly. "Mark actually said yes. Can you believe it? I thought I'd have to convince him for weeks." Jake's laughter made my stomach turn. Poor bastard has no idea what he's losing. "You sure he won't change his mind?" "He won't. He's too afraid of losing me. God, Jake, I feel so alive when I'm with you. Mark he makes everything feel so safe and boring." "Well, tomorrow night won't be boring, baby. I've got champagne, strawberries, and something special from Victoria's Secret waiting for you." The recording cut off as Sarah apparently ended the call. I sat back in my chair, feeling strangely calm. The betrayal was complete now, not just the physical affair I'd suspected, but the emotional cruelty of mocking me to her lover. But what Sarah and Jake didn't know was that their conversation had just been automatically uploaded to a secure cloud server that Lisa had set up. Every cruel word, every laugh at my expense, every detail of their planned encounter was now documented evidence. My phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "Martinez is in position at the hotel. Cameras ready. You sure you want to go through with watching this?" I debated this part extensively. Part of me wanted to spare myself the visual confirmation of my wife's betrayal, but Lisa had been insistent. Divorce court is theater. The more devastating your evidence, the more sympathetic you become, and sympathy translates to better settlement terms. "Yes," I texted back. "I need to see it all." Saturday evening arrived with cruel irony. It was beautiful outside, the kind of night Sarah and I used to spend on our back porch, talking about our future children and growing old together. Instead, I was sitting in my living room, laptop open, watching my marriage end in real time. The tracking app showed Sarah's phone at the Fairmont by 7 p.m. Martinez's surveillance photos started coming through shortly after. Sarah entering the hotel lobby in a red dress I'd never seen before, her hair and makeup done professionally. She looked stunning, and it made everything worse knowing she had gotten dressed up to betray me. At 7:23 p.m., Jake Miller appeared in the photos. My former friend looked exactly like he had in college, just with better clothes and an expensive watch. He greeted Sarah with a kiss that lasted far too long for two people who were supposedly just starting their affair. "They've done this before," Martinez texted me along with the photos. "Body language doesn't lie. This is established intimacy, not first-time nervousness." More evidence of Sarah's lies. The one night she'd requested was just legitimizing something that had already been happening for months. The photos continued throughout the evening. Sarah and Jake at the hotel bar, sharing intimate conversation and touches. Sarah laughing at something Jake said, her hand on his thigh. The two of them entering the elevator together, Sarah's hand already tangled in Jake's hair. At 9:47 p.m., Martinez sent her final message. "They're in the room. Audio equipment is active. Do you want me to continue monitoring?" I stared at my laptop screen for a long time. Below the message was a live audio feed from the surveillance equipment Martinez had planted in the suite earlier that day. All I had to do was click a button, and I'd hear my wife having sex with another man.
The rational part of my brain knew I didn't need to hear it. I had enough evidence to destroy Sarah in court already. But the part of me that loved her, that had trusted her, that had believed in our marriage, that part needed to understand the depth of her betrayal. I clicked the button. What I heard over the next 3 hours destroyed any remaining illusion I had about my marriage. Sarah wasn't just cheating, she was reveling in it. She was louder, more passionate, more alive than I'd heard her in years. And between their encounters, Sarah and Jake talked. "I can't believe I wasted 6 years with him," Sarah said at one point, her voice lazy with satisfaction. "Mark's like a puppy dog, so grateful for any attention, so eager to please." "What are you going to do? You can't stay married to him now that you know what you're missing." "I don't know. Maybe I'll have to find a way to make him want the divorce, make him think it's his idea." "How would you do that?" Sarah laughed, and the sound was like ice in my veins. "Mark's like a puppy dog. He thinks everyone is as honest as he is. I could probably have an affair for years, and he'd just assume I was working late." Speaking of which, Jake's voice turned more serious. "My wife's getting suspicious. We might need to be more careful." "Or less careful," Sarah said. "Maybe it's time for both of us to stop pretending we're happy in our marriages." They talked about leaving their spouses, about the life they could build together, and about how much better they were suited for each other than their boring partners. Jake mentioned that his wife had family money, so divorce would be expensive for him. Sarah talked about how she could probably get half of everything I'd worked for, plus alimony. "Mark's too nice to fight me on it," she said confidently. "He'll probably just want it over with quickly." As I listened to my wife plan my financial destruction while celebrating her betrayal, something fundamental shifted inside me. The love I'd felt for Sarah, the desperate hope that maybe we could work things out, died completely. In its place grew something cold and focused, pure, calculating rage. At 1:23 a.m., the audio finally got quiet. I closed my laptop and sat in the darkness of my living room, surrounded by the life Sarah and I had built together. The wedding photos on the mantle, the furniture we'd chosen together, the mortgage we'd both signed, all of it now felt like elaborate stage dressing for a play I didn't know I was acting in. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Miss you, love you, see you tomorrow night." I stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Love you too. Can't wait to see you." The lie came easily now, because Sarah had taught me something valuable tonight. Sometimes the truth is a luxury you can't afford.
The Monday after Sarah's conference, I woke up before dawn and made a decision that would change everything. I was done being the victim in this story. While Sarah slept peacefully beside me, exhausted, no doubt, from her weekend of passion, I quietly got dressed and drove to Lisa's law office. At 6 a.m., the building was empty except for the security guard, but Lisa was already there. Corporate law had taught her that the early hours were when the real work got done. "You look different," she said, studying my face as I sat across from her desk. "Good different." I listened to the recordings. All of them. Lisa nodded grimly. "I figured you would. How bad was it?" "Worse than we thought." I pulled out my phone and played her the audio clip where Sarah and Jake discussed divorcing their spouses and taking them for everything they could get. "They've been planning this for months, Lisa. The whole one-night request was just Sarah's way of easing her guilt while she figured out how to destroy me financially." My sister's expression grew predatory. "This is good, Mark. Really good. A jury will hear this and see premeditated emotional and financial cruelty." "There's more." I showed her the financial records Martinez had uncovered. Sarah's been funneling money into a personal account I didn't know about. Small amounts, but consistent. She's been preparing to leave for a while. Lisa leaned back in our chair,
and I could practically see her legal mind working. "Mark, I need you to understand something. What we have here isn't just grounds for divorce. It's grounds for a complete financial victory. Sarah has committed adultery, financial deception, and emotional cruelty. In the right courtroom, with the right presentation, she could end up with nothing." "Good," I said, and meant it. "But," Lisa continued, "we need to be smart about this. If you confront her now, she'll lawyer up and start covering her tracks. We need her to keep digging her own grave." "What do you suggest?" Lisa smiled, and it reminded me why opposing attorneys feared her. "We give her exactly what she thinks she wants. We make her believe she's winning while we gather more evidence. And then, when she's completely committed to her new life with Jake, we destroy both of them simultaneously." Over the next month, I became a master of deception. Not the kind Sarah practiced. Hers was sloppy, emotional, driven by desire. Mine was surgical, precise, driven by cold calculation. I played the role of the grateful husband, perfectly. When Sarah came home late from work, I thanked her for her dedication. When she was distant and distracted, I assumed it was stress and offered to give her space. When she suggested we postpone starting a family just for a few more months, I agreed, saying I wanted to make sure our finances were stable first. That last suggestion had been Lisa's idea. The longer we drag out the marriage without children, the less she can claim an alimony, and it gives us more time to document her ongoing affair. Because Sarah's affair with Jake hadn't ended with their night at the Fairmont. If anything, it had intensified. Martinez's surveillance showed them meeting twice a week now, sometimes for lunch at expensive restaurants, sometimes for afternoons at different hotels around the city. She was using vacation days and sick days to spend time with Jake, lying to both her employer and me about her whereabouts. The financial deception was escalating too. Sarah had opened a credit card in her name only and was using it to buy gifts for Jake. Expensive watches, designer clothes, even a weekend trip to wine country that she told me was a girls' retreat with coworkers. But my favorite piece of evidence came from the voice recorder in Sarah's car. 3 weeks after the Fairmont, I captured a conversation between Sarah and Monica that was pure gold. "You're glowing," Monica said. "Please tell me you didn't go through with that insane plan to ask Mark for permission to cheat." "I did," Sarah laughed. "And he said yes. Can you believe it? I thought he'd lose his mind, but he was so understanding about it." "Sarah, that's kind of cruel, don't you think? Mark loves you." "Mark loves the idea of me. He loves his safe little wife who cooks dinner and talks about babies and never rocks the boat. But I'm not that person anymore. Jake makes me feel alive." "So what happens now? Are you leaving Mark?" "Eventually. I just need to be smart about it. I'm building up my own savings, documenting all of Mark's controlling behavior." "Controlling behavior? Mark? The guy who let you redecorate the entire house without saying a word? You'd be surprised how easy it is to make someone look controlling when you know what to emphasize. A good divorce attorney can spin anything." Monica was quiet for a moment. "Sarah, I've known you for 10 years. This isn't you. Maybe the old me wasn't really me. Maybe I was just playing a role because it was expected. But I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not." When I played that recording for Lisa, she literally applauded. "She's admitting to planning false accusations. Mark, your wife just handed us a slam dunk case. No judge in the world will award her anything substantial after hearing this." But I wasn't done gathering evidence. Because while Sarah thought she was being clever, she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated my capacity for patience and planning. The breakthrough came in week 6 of my silent investigation. Sarah had gotten careless, leaving her phone unlocked while she showered. I used those precious minutes to install a more sophisticated tracking app, one that could monitor deleted texts, call logs, and even app usage. What I discovered made everything else pale in comparison. Sarah and Jake weren't just having an affair, they were actively sabotaging both of their marriages. Jake had been feeding Sarah strategies for making me look bad, ways to provoke arguments she could document, methods for hiding money, even suggestions for creating evidence of abuse that didn't exist. In return, Sarah was helping Jake manipulate his wife, Lisa Miller. A woman I'd met several times at college reunions, a sweet kindergarten teacher who clearly adored her husband and children. The text between Sarah and Jake read like a manual for marital destruction. Picked a fight with Mark again about money, recorded the whole thing. He sounds so aggressive on the recording. Good girl. I told Lisa you were just a work friend when she asked about you. She's so trusting. It's almost pathetic. Can't wait until we can be together openly. Think we should leave our spouses at the same time? Maybe. I want to make sure I get custody of the kids first. Lisa won't fight me if she thinks I'm the stable parent. Reading those texts, I realized that Sarah wasn't just betraying me, she was helping Jake destroy an innocent woman and potentially harm 2 children. The Sarah that I'd married would never have been capable of such cruelty. But then again, maybe I'd never really known Sarah at all. That night, as Sarah slept beside me after another late work session with Jake, I made my final preparations. I'd gathered enough evidence to destroy her completely. Financial records showing her deception, surveillance photos and videos of her affair, audio recordings of her planning my destruction, and text messages revealing her conspiracy with Jake to manipulate both marriages. Lisa had already filed the preliminary divorce papers, though Sarah didn't know it yet. We'd timed everything carefully. The papers would be served at her office on a day when Jake would also be served at his home, in front of his unsuspecting wife. You want maximum psychological impact, Lisa had explained. Sarah thinks she's in control of this situation. When she realizes how thoroughly she's been outmaneuvered, it'll be too late for her to mount an effective defense. I had also taken steps to protect myself financially. Working with Lisa's forensic accountant, I'd traced every dollar Sarah had stolen and prepared documentation showing her financial deception. The house was solely in my name, something Sarah had insisted on when we bought it because her credit score was lower. Our joint accounts had been legally frozen pending the divorce proceedings. Most importantly, I'd made copies of everything and stored them in multiple secure locations. Even if Sarah somehow discovered my investigation and tried to destroy evidence, it would be too late. But my favorite preparation was the simplest one. I'd started working out again, eating better, updating my wardrobe. Not for Sarah, I was done caring what she thought, but for me, for the new life I was about to build, without her. Because while Sarah had been planning my destruction, I'd been planning something far more satisfying. My complete and total victory. The papers would be served in 3 days. After that, Sarah would finally understand that her quiet, understanding husband had been playing a much longer game than she ever had imagined. And unlike her sloppy, emotional schemes, mine was about to succeed beyond her worst nightmares. As I drifted off to sleep next to my lying, cheating wife, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not the false peace of ignorance I had before, but the true peace that comes from knowing you've prepared for every contingency. Sarah Daniels thought she'd destroyed me. She was about to learn how wrong she was.
The morning of reckoning arrived on a Tuesday in October. Sarah had left for work early, claiming another important meeting with the Henderson client. Code I now knew for another morning rendezvous with Jake at their new favorite hotel. At exactly 10 a.m., while Sarah and Jake were likely in bed together, 2 process servers walked into their respective locations. Sarah would be served at her marketing firm in front of her colleagues. Jake would be served at his home, where his wife Lisa was enjoying a quiet morning with their children. I wasn't there to see Sarah's face when she received the divorce papers, but Martinez had positioned herself in the coffee shop across from Sarah's office building. Her text came at 10:17 a.m., package delivered. Target looked like she'd seen a ghost, currently making frantic phone calls. My phone rang 30 seconds later. Mark, what the hell is this? Sarah's voice was shaking, whether from rage or panic, I couldn't tell. I just got served with divorce papers. This has to be some kind of mistake. I was sitting in my home office, surrounded by printed copies of every piece of evidence I'd gathered. Photos of her with Jake, transcripts of her cruelest conversations, financial records of her deception, bank statements showing the money she'd stolen.
It was enough to fill 3 banker's boxes, and every page represented another nail in the coffin of her greed. It's not a mistake, Sarah. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought she'd hung up. You're divorcing me? But why? I thought we were working through things. I interrupted. You thought I was stupid. You thought I was weak and trusting and that I'd never figure out what you were really doing. Mark, I don't know what you think you know, but I know about Jake, Sarah. I know about all of it. Another silence. Then, in a much smaller voice, what do you mean, all of it? I could have drawn this out, could have made her sweat and beg for information. But I was done playing games. I know the affair started 4 months before you asked for permission. I know about the hotels, the restaurants, the gifts you bought him with our money. I know about the secret bank account. I know about the fake conference weekend. I know about your plans to leave me and take me for everything I'm worth. Mark, let me explain. I know about the recordings you made trying to make me sound abusive. I know about how you and Jake have been sabotaging both of your marriages. I know about your plans to help him get custody of his children by making his wife look unstable. With each revelation, I could hear Sarah's breathing getting more ragged. Most importantly, Sarah, I know exactly who you really are, and you're going to find out that the husband you thought was too weak to fight back has been planning this for a very long time. Mark, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. I made mistakes, but read the papers. Then call a lawyer, a good one. You're going to need it. I hung up and immediately turned off my phone. Sarah could panic and scheme all she wanted now. It was too late to matter. Lisa called me on my landline an hour later, and I could hear the satisfaction in her voice. It's even better than we hoped. Sarah's employer is not happy about the personal use of company resources. Apparently, several of those romantic dinners were charged to the Henderson Project budget. They're conducting an internal investigation. And Jake? Oh, Mark, you're gonna love this. Martinez's contact at his office says he never showed up for work today. Apparently his wife threw him out of the house after she was served. She found some very interesting text messages on his phone after she confronted him. She paused and I could hear papers rustling. But the real beautiful part is what happened when Sarah tried to access that secret bank account this afternoon. Turns out our forensic accountant was right. She's been using joint marital assets to fund it. The court throws all her accounts pending the investigation into financial fraud. I felt a grim satisfaction at that news. Sarah had been so confident in her planning, but she'd made the classic mistake of thinking she was smarter than everyone else in the room. What happens now? Now we go to war, Lisa said. Sarah's going to hire someone, probably someone expensive, and they're going to try to paint you as the controlling husband who drove her to cheat. They'll claim emotional abuse, financial manipulation, maybe even try to argue that you coerced her into the affair by giving permission. Can they make that stick? Lisa's laugh was sharp. Mark, we have recordings of Sarah mocking you to her lover and planning your financial destruction. We have evidence of systematic fraud, adultery, and conspiracy to commit perjury. We have surveillance footage of her affair and documentation of every lie she's told. No competent attorney would take this case to trial. So she'll settle? She'll have to. The question is how much dignity she has left to bargain with. The answer, as it turned out, was none. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah's life imploded with a thoroughness that even I hadn't anticipated. Her employer terminated her for misuse of company resources and fraudulent expense reports. The internal investigation revealed that she'd been charging personal expenses to client accounts for months, not just her affair with Jake. Jake's situation was even worse. His wife, Lisa, sweet, trusting Lisa, who taught kindergarten and baked cookies for school fundraisers, had hired her own attorney and was seeking full custody of their children. The text messages Sarah and Jake had exchanged about manipulating her had been turned over to Child Protective Services as evidence of Jake's unfitness as a parent. But the most satisfying development came from an unexpected source. Monica, Sarah's friend who'd questioned her behavior in that car recording, had apparently grown a conscience. She contacted Lisa's office and offered to testify about conversations where Sarah had admitted to fabricating evidence and planning false accusations. "Your wife burned every bridge she had," Lisa told me during one of our strategy meetings. "Her friends think she's become cruel and manipulative. Her family is embarrassed by the public scandal. Even her attorney is advising her to take whatever deal we offer." The deal we offered was brutal and fair in equal measure. Sarah would get nothing from our joint assets. The house, the cars, the investments, all of it stayed with me. She'd be responsible for her own legal fees and would have to repay the money she'd stolen from our joint accounts. In exchange, I wouldn't press criminal charges for fraud and theft. "She'll never agree to this," Sarah's attorney said during our first settlement conference. "It's completely one-sided." Lisa slid a thumb drive across the table. "That contains audio and video evidence of your client's systematic betrayal, financial fraud, and conspiracy to commit perjury. If Sarah Daniels prefers to take this to trial, we're confident a jury will be even less generous than our current offer." The attorney, an expensive suit named Harrison who specialized in high-conflict divorces, took the drive and disappeared for 20 minutes to review the contents. When he came back, his face was pale. "We'll need some time to discuss this with our client." "You have 48 hours," Lisa replied. "After that, we withdraw the offer and proceed to trial." Sarah called me that night, breaking the no-contact order both attorneys had recommended. "Mark, please, I'm begging you. I made mistakes, but this will destroy my entire life." I was sitting in my home office, the same room where I had first listened to recordings of her betrayal. The house felt different now, cleaner somehow, like I'd finally gotten rid of something toxic that had been poisoning the air. "You destroyed your own life, Sarah. I just documented it." "I loved you," she said, and I could hear her crying. "I know I made horrible choices, but I did love you." "No," I said quietly. "You loved the security I provided. You loved having someone who would never question your lies or challenge your selfishness. But you never loved me, Sarah. If you had, you couldn't have done what you did." "What am I supposed to do now? I have nothing. No job, no money, nowhere to go." "You have exactly what you deserve. The consequences of your choices." She hung up without another word. 2 days later, Sarah signed the settlement agreement. Lisa called me with the news while I was at work, building code for a new project, something clean and logical and honest. "It's over, Mark. She took the deal." I felt a strange emptiness at those words. For months, my life had been focused on this moment, on seeing justice done and wrongs corrected. Now that it was finished, I wasn't sure what came next. "How do you feel?" Lisa asked. I thought about that question for a long time. How did I feel? Not happy, exactly. Not sad, either. Maybe free. I feel like I can finally start living again. And I could. For the first time in years, I could make plans without wondering if the person I loved was lying to me. I could build a future without worrying about someone secretly working to tear it down. I could trust my own judgment again because I'd proven to myself that I was capable of seeing clearly, even when it hurt. The house felt like home again. I'd redecorated